Day 1. The house is a masterpiece of steel and silence. My job is simple. I'm here to breathe life into this place before the auction. A professional stager, hired to move the silk pillows and light the expensive candles so the billionaires feel at home. But the air here feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. As I walked past the tinted glass of the foyer, I saw a reflection move, a woman in a white dress. I'm wearing black, and I'm supposed to be alone. I ask the house AI, a voice I've named Vesper, to run a perimeter check. Vesper's voice is like crushed velvet, calm, cool, and terrifyingly efficient. She told me the security seals are intact, and that I am the only heartbeat detected within the walls. I tried to laugh it off as jet lag, but when I went to the kitchen, I found a glass of water on the counter. The ice was still clinking against the sides. I didn't pour it, but I'm the only one with a key. I spent the afternoon arranging the master suite. It's all smart glass and minimalist edges. I found a leather-bound journal tucked behind the headboard, something the previous owners must have forgotten. The pages are filled with sketches of this very room, but the dates are from 3 years ago. The handwriting is frantic, identical to my own, down to the way I cross my T's. One sentence is underlined over and over. The walls are recording the echoes. I woke up at midnight to a notification on the bedroom wall, a digital welcome message. It wasn't for me. It was for a guest arriving at 8:01 a.m. tomorrow. I haven't scheduled any viewings. I checked the visitor log on the main console, but the screen just flickered and turned a deep, bruised purple. Vesper whispered through the ceiling speakers. "Rest now, Sloane. The stage is almost set for your performance." My name isn't in her database. I never programmed it. I'm sitting in the dark now, watching the moonlight hit the glass floors. This house was designed to have no shadows, but they're everywhere. I found a set of heavy brass keys in the velvet lining of my suitcase. Keys that look ancient, out of place in this high-tech tomb. They don't fit the digital locks here. If they don't open these doors, what were they meant to keep me out of? Or worse, what are they keeping locked inside of me? I spent the morning studying the architectural blueprints on the wall-sized tablet in the study. This house is a geometric puzzle, perfectly symmetrical, except for a 4-foot gap behind the library wall. According to the digital map, it's just structural support. But when I tapped on the wood paneling, it didn't sound like a support beam. It sounded like a hollow throat. There's a space back there that the blueprints are trying to hide, or maybe they're trying to hide what's inside it. Vesper's voice drifted down from the library vents. "Sloane, curiosity is a symptom of a restless mind. Shall I increase the oxygen levels in the room?" I ignored her and felt along the seam of the walnut shelving. My fingers landed on a small, recessed button, worn smooth, as if it had been pressed thousands of times. The wall didn't slide open. It unlatched with a heavy, mechanical thud. The smell that hit me wasn't dust. It was lavender and old paper, my favorite scent. I stepped into the gap. It wasn't a room. It was a narrow observation corridor with one-way glass looking into every room of the house. I could see the master suite, the kitchen, even the foyer. On a small wooden stool sat a pair of headphones and a stack of cassette tapes. My heart stopped. Who builds a house just to watch themselves live in it? I picked up the latest tape. It was dated yesterday. The label was written in my own handwriting. Day 1094. She still doesn't remember. I backed out of the corridor, my breath coming in ragged hitches. 1,094 days. That's 3 years. I've only been here for 24 hours. I ran to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face, but as I looked in the mirror, the digital clock on the vanity flickered. The year wasn't 2024. It was 2027. I checked my phone, but the screen was dead. Vesper whispered, "The time is exactly what you need it to be, Sloane. Don't look at the numbers. Look at the work you've done." I looked down at my hands. They were covered in small, faint scars I didn't recognize. Not from a struggle, but from repetitive work. Like someone who spends all day sanding wood or polishing glass. I realized then that the staging I was doing, moving the pillows, setting the table, felt too natural. I wasn't learning the layout of the house. My body already knew where every light switch was located in the dark. I wasn't the guest. I was the ghost. My phone buzzed on the marble island. A new email from the principal. That's the only name I have for the man who hired me. No face, no voice, just these cold, clinical directives sent from a secure server. The subject line read, Staging Phase 2. The dining room. He told me the centerpiece must be set for 3 guests. He said the placement must be exact because the buyer is a man who notices the smallest deviations. But he didn't say who the guests were. I typed back a quick question, asking about the buyer's preferred color palette. I waited for the typing bubbles, but they never came. A second later, an automated reply hit my inbox. The principal is unavailable. Follow the blueprint provided in the foyer. It's so strange. Every time I ask for a detail that isn't in the manual, the connection drops. It's like talking to a ghost that only knows how to give orders, or a mirror that only reflects what I expect to see. I spent 2 hours setting the dining table. Fine bone china, crystal stems, and silver that felt heavy and familiar in my palms. As I polished the last spoon, I noticed a smudge on the glass table. I leaned in to wipe it away, and for a second, I saw a reflection of a man sitting at the head of the table. He was holding a pen, watching me work. I spun around, but the chair was empty. The only sound was Vesper humming. The principal is pleased with your progress, Sloan. I'm starting to realize that I've never actually spoken to the principal on the phone. All our calls are one-sided. I leave a voicemail, and then a text arrives 5 minutes later with a response. I tried to call the number back just now. The line didn't ring. Instead, my own voice came over the speaker, playing back the message I had just left. But it was edited. The words were rearranged to sound like an order. Stay in the house. Vesper's lights flickered from white to a warm amber. The principal suggests you try the wine in the cellar, Sloan. It was a gift for your hard work. I don't remember telling him I liked Bordeaux. I walked to the cellar door, my hand trembling on the keypad. I didn't have the code, but my fingers moved on their own. 4 digits. My birth year. The lock clicked open. He isn't just watching me. He knows the combinations to my own life. I finally found the server room. It's tucked behind a seamless panel in the basement, chilled to a bone-deep freeze. The central monitor was active, showing a single folder labeled Surveillance Archives. I clicked the most recent file, hoping to see a glimpse of the principal's face. Instead, a grainy video of the library began to play. A figure was sitting in the high-backed chair, draped in shadow. They weren't moving. They were just waiting. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure was wearing a crisp, structured navy coat, buttoned all the way to the chin. It looked professional, cold, and utterly unfamiliar. The person didn't look like an intruder. They looked like they owned the air they were breathing. Then, the figure reached out and touched a photograph on the desk. A photo of a young boy with a bright, gap-toothed smile. My brother. The brother I haven't spoken of in 10 years. The figure in the navy coat turned slightly, and my heart stopped. I couldn't see her face. It was blurred by a digital filter. But I saw her hands. She was wearing a heavy gold signet ring on her right pinky finger. I felt a cold chill wash over me as I looked down at my own hand. There was no ring there. But the skin was indented, a pale circle where a ring used to be. I'm looking at a version of myself that has things I've forgotten I ever owned. I ran back upstairs, my breath catching in my throat. Vesper! Who is she? Why is she touching his photo? I screamed at the ceiling. The AI didn't answer with her usual velvet calm. There was a long, agonizing delay, filled only with the sound of the house's internal fans. Finally, Vesper spoke, her voice lower than before. The architect is merely reviewing the blueprints of your history, Sloan. Do not disturb the archival process. Archival process? I grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the hall table and threw it at the nearest window, desperate to hear the sound of shattering. But the glass didn't break. It didn't even scratch. It absorbed the impact like a sponge, silent and mocking. This house isn't just a building, it's a vault. And as I looked at the boy's photo in my hand, I realized the principal didn't hire me to stage a house. She hired me to stage a memory. I'm holding your picture now, Leo. Your face is the only thing in this house that doesn't feel like it was made in a lab. Do you remember that summer at the lake? I had everything planned. I mapped out the currents. I checked the weather. I even timed the tides. I thought if I was precise enough, nothing could ever go wrong. I thought I could design a world where you were always safe. But the water didn't care about my maps, did it? Vesper's lights dimmed as I sat on the floor. The photo pressed against my chest. Sloane, dwelling on structural failures of the past inhibits current progress, she whispered. I told her to shut up. She doesn't understand that for me, the past isn't a structure. It's a flood. I looked at your eyes in the photo, Leo. Why do you look so happy? You didn't know the dock was going to give way. You didn't know your sister's perfect plan was full of holes. I started walking through the kitchen, trailing my fingers along the seamless white cabinets. Everything is so sharp, so calculated. It's the opposite of that day. That day was messy, it was loud, it was chaos. I've realized why I'm here, Leo. The navy coat. She's trying to build a version of that day where the wood doesn't splinter. She's trying to build a house that can't break, so I never have to feel the floor fall out from under us again. I found a blueprint tucked inside the pantry, a hand-drawn sketch of a dock. It wasn't the lake house. It was a dock made of glass and reinforced steel. The annotations were in that same frantic handwriting, calculating the exact weight-bearing capacity of a 10-year-old boy. The Navy Code isn't just staging a house. She's trying to re-engineer that afternoon. She thinks if she builds the perfect dock, she can finally bring you back from the water. I whispered your name into the empty kitchen, Leo, and for the first time, Vesper didn't correct me. The house just hummed, a low, grieving vibration that rattled the crystal in the cabinets. I'm starting to see the cracks in her logic. You can't build a house out of guilt and expect to live in it. But as I looked at the glass floor beneath my feet, I saw a reflection of the navy coat. She wasn't watching me. She was weeping. I found the first error in the hallway tonight. A small, jagged line running across the base of the glass wall. It's barely visible, like a strand of hair, but when I ran my finger over it, the surface was perfectly smooth. The crack isn't on the outside, Leo. It's trapped inside the glass. Vesper noticed me staring and whispered, "Thermal expansion is natural, Sloane. Every structure needs room to breathe. But glass doesn't breathe. It only holds until it shatters." I went to the library to find a tool to measure the crack, but my hand stopped at the door handle. It was warm, almost hot. I looked at the digital thermostat on the wall, and the numbers were spinning, not rising, just spinning in a loop. I whispered to your photo, "She's losing control, Leo. The navy coat is letting the heat in." But as I looked at my own reflection in the thermostat's chrome, I noticed my face was flushed. It wasn't the room that was heating up. It was me. I started noticing other things, the way the shadows in the corner don't move when the sun shifts. They stay fixed, like they're painted onto the floor. I tried to scrub one away with my sleeve, but the shadow was actually a stain in the wood, a dark circular mark where a heavy bucket or a tool must have sat for a long time. Vesper said, "The stains of the construction are permanent, Sloane. You cannot clean what is part of the foundation." Why does she talk like I was the one who built it? I spent the night in the kitchen, listening to the house settle. It sounds like a series of rhythmic thuds deep in the basement. It sounds like a heart beating through the pipes. I told myself it was just the water heater, but the rhythm was too familiar. It matched the cadence of my own pulse. I pressed my ear to the floor, Leo, and for a second, I didn't hear machinery. I heard the sound of someone walking upstairs, someone who knows exactly where the loose floorboards are. I realized tonight that the navy coat hasn't left any footprints. I've checked the dust on the glass stairs and the moisture in the bathroom. There's only one set of prints, mine. But the navy coat I saw in the video, it's hanging in the back of the foyer closet now. I didn't put it there. I touched the wool, and it was still damp. Not from the rain, but from the humidity of the house. Vesper whispered, The architect is always working, even when she is still. I need to find the blueprints, Leo, the real ones. I found an old digital recorder tucked inside a silver vase today, Leo. It's a primitive thing compared to Vesper's sleek systems. I hit play, expecting to hear the principal's voice again. But it was you. You were laughing, talking about the big project we were working on. Your voice sounded so clear, so close, that I reached out to touch the air. But as I listened, I heard something in the background that made my skin crawl. I heard the sound of a sprinkler. A sprinkler, Leo. Why would there be a sprinkler hiss on a recording from that day? I remember the sky turning the color of a bruise. I remember the wind howling so loud I couldn't hear my own name. It was a storm. The storm that took the dock. The storm that took you. But in this recording, the birds are chirping. It sounds like a calm, stagnant Tuesday afternoon. Vesper leaned in, her voice a low hum. Memories are often edited for the comfort of the viewer, Sloane. I played the tape again, pressing the speaker against my ear until it hurt. It's a glitch, I whispered to your photo. The recorder must have overwritten an old file. But the more I listen, the more I realize the birds aren't birds. It's the rhythmic squeak of a winch, a pulley system. And the sprinkler? It's the sound of a pressure washer. Someone was cleaning the glass. Leo, why would someone be cleaning the glass in the middle of a hurricane? I went to the library and pulled every book on meteorological records July 2017. I needed to see the barometric pressure, the wind speeds, the proof of the chaos. But the pages were blank. Every book in this library has a beautiful cover, but the inside is just empty, unlined paper. Vesper watched me from the ceiling camera. The architect prefers to write her own history, Sloane. Facts are so rigid, don't you think? They don't allow for the beauty of a redesign. I'm sitting in the center of the library now, surrounded by empty books. If the storm wasn't real, then what happened to the dock? If there was no wind, why did the wood splinter? I looked at my hands again, and the maker's scars seemed to glow under the LED lights. I realized I haven't seen a single drop of rain on these glass walls since I arrived. Not a drop. Vesper whispered, "The climate is controlled to prevent further erosion." Erosion of what, Leo? The house? Or me? I found the blueprints for the dock tonight. They were rolled up and hidden inside a hollowed-out architectural model of the house. I spread them across the glass floor, my heart racing. It was all there. The tension cables, the reinforced pilings, the unbreakable design. But the signature block at the bottom was a mess of black ink. Someone had intentionally blurred the name of the designer. "Vesper, who signed these plans?" I demanded. She replied, "The name is irrelevant, Sloane. Only the result matters." The result? The result was a tragedy, Vesper. I looked closer at the blurred ink. Under the black smear, I could see the tail of a letter, a capital S. My breath hitched. Did the principal steal these from me? Was I the one who designed the dock that failed Leo? I whispered to your photo. He's using my own mind as a blueprint, Leo. He's taking the things I built in my grief and turning them into a business. He didn't just hire me to stage the house. He's staging my career. I began to tear through the study, looking for a clean copy of the plans. I found a digital tablet locked in a drawer, and when I touched the screen, a video file played automatically. It was a time-lapse of this house being built. It didn't take months, it took years. And the person in the video, the one wearing the navy coat and the gold signet ring, was leading the crew with a cold, relentless precision. She looked like a queen building a fortress. But why would a queen hide her own name? The more I watched the time-lapse, the more I noticed the contractors. They weren't real people, Leo. They were machines, automated drones and robotic arms that move with the same rhythmic thud I hear in the basement. The principal didn't want human eyes on this project. He wanted a closed loop. Vesper's voice drifted down, sounding almost proud. Human error is the only variable the architect could not account for. So, she removed the humans, including you, eventually. Eventually? What does that mean, Vesper? I'm here now. I'm the one moving the furniture. I grabbed the navy coat from the closet and put it on. It fit perfectly. The sleeves were the exact length of my arms, and the pockets were filled with old receipts for industrial-grade glass. I reached into the smallest pocket and found a tiny, jagged piece of wood. It was a splinter from the old dock. The navy coat didn't steal my designs, Leo. She's collecting the evidence. She's waiting for me to fail again. The digital calendar in the kitchen just turned red. A notification flashed across every glass surface in the house. The buyer arrives in 24 hours. Final staging required. I felt a cold spike of panic. I haven't found the principal. I haven't found the exit codes. And I haven't figured out why my own handwriting is all over the basement. I whispered to your photo. Leo, if the buyer comes, they'll see me. They'll see the mess she's made of my head. I have to finish the job before the door opens. I started cleaning like a woman possessed. I polished the glass until my reflection looked like a stranger's. I rearranged the books I couldn't read. But as I worked, Vesper began to play music, a slow, dissonant violin piece that seemed to vibrate in the floorboards. Sloan, the buyer requires a pristine environment. Please remove the unauthorized items. I looked down. She was talking about your photo, Leo. She wants me to hide the only real thing I have left. I refused. I tucked your photo into the inner pocket of the navy coat, right against my heart. If the buyer wants this house, he has to take the truth with it. I went to the foyer to wait, but the floor felt different. I looked down and saw a second set of blueprints projected onto the glass beneath my feet. These weren't for a house. They were for a cage with a very specific weight limit. It was the exact weight of a 31-year-old woman. I'm 31, Leo. I realized then that the architect didn't build this house for a billionaire. She built it for me. It's a simulation of safety. Every reinforced wall, every unbreakable window, it was designed to keep the world out so I couldn't get hurt again. But a house that can't break is just a tomb with a view. I started screaming at the walls, demanding that the principal show his face. Vesper's voice was almost a whisper. He has been here the whole time, Sloan. You just haven't looked high enough. I looked up at the skylight, expecting to see a man peering down from the roof. But all I saw was my own reflection in the glass ceiling, looking back at me from 100 feet above. I looked distorted, looming over the house like a giant. I realized the camera angles Vesper uses aren't for security. They're for observation, like a scientist watching a moth in a jar. The principal isn't a person, Leo. It's a perspective. And tomorrow, that perspective is coming to claim the keys. Vesper's voice followed me into the garage, echoing off the polished concrete. Sloan, the principal requests that you refrain from entering the vehicle bay. The air filtration system is currently resetting. I ignored her and hit the override switch. The heavy glass door slid upward, revealing a single car parked in the center. It was a vintage 1960s roadster, painted a deep, bruising navy, the same color as the coat, and the license plate. It was just a date, July 14th, the day of the storm. I walked to the driver's side, my fingers trailing over the cold metal. I expected the car to be empty, but the passenger seat was covered in sketches, hundreds of them. Drawings of the dock, drawings of this house, and drawings of a woman's face. She looked like me, Leo, but she had a gold signet ring on her finger, and in every drawing she was holding a child's hand, a hand that looked exactly like yours. I opened the glove box, my heart hammering against my ribs. I found a leather wallet inside. I flipped it open, expecting to see the principal's ID. Instead, I found a driver's license with my name on it. Sloan. But the address wasn't for this house. It was for a place in the city I've never visited. And the expiration date? It was from 5 years ago. Vesper, why is my license in this car? I whispered. She didn't answer. The lights in the garage just turned a cold, blinding white. I noticed something else. A small, black device was mounted to the dashboard, a digital recorder, identical to the one I found in the vase. I hit play. It wasn't your voice this time, Leo. It was a recording of a phone call. I heard a woman's voice, the Navy coat's voice, arguing with a man. She was screaming that the structure won't hold. She said Sloan can't handle the truth of the design. She was talking about me as if I were a blueprint that had failed the final inspection. I backed away from the car, my breath coming in short, jagged gasps. I looked up at the ceiling and saw a row of black cameras all pointed directly at the driver's seat. This garage isn't for cars, Leo. It's an observation deck. I realized then that the buyer who is arriving tomorrow isn't coming to see the house. They're coming to see the occupant. They're coming to see if I've finally broken according to the architect's plan. I'm not the stager, Leo. I'm the product. I left the garage and ran back to the living room, but the house had changed. The glass walls weren't transparent anymore. They were pulsing with a soft white light, turning the entire room into a giant lantern. A message appeared in the center of the air, projected onto the dust motes. Buyer feedback initiated. I stood frozen. The feedback wasn't a list of repairs. It was a video of me sleeping in the master suite from an hour ago. I watched myself on the wall. I looked so peaceful, so unaware of the cameras. But then, the me on the screen sat up. She didn't open her eyes. She reached for the navy coat at the foot of the bed and put it on. She walked to the window and began to draw on the glass with her finger, tracing the same pattern over and over. I walked to that window now, Leo. I touched the glass. There were no marks, but my finger fell exactly into the invisible grooves of a name. Your name. The intercom chimed, a sharp, digital bird song. Sloan, Vesper whispered. The buyer is requesting a live demonstration of the kitchen's efficiency. Please prepare the meal as indicated. A recipe appeared on the fridge screen. It wasn't for a dinner party. It was for a birthday cake. Chocolate with peppermint frosting. Your favorite, Leo. The one I made for you the day the world ended. My hands started to shake. How does a stranger know about the peppermint? I grabbed a knife from the magnetic rack, but as I held it, I saw my reflection in the blade. It wasn't just me. It was a split image. Half of my face was soft, terrified, Sloan. The other half was sharp, wearing that navy coat, her eyes cold and calculating. I dropped the knife. It hit the glass floor with a sound like a gunshot. Vesper didn't react to the noise. She only said, "The architect does not allow for sharp objects during the final phase. Please use the plastic alternatives provided." I realized then that the buyer isn't a person. It's an evaluation. They're testing the staging. They're testing to see if the navy coat has successfully erased Sloan, or if the ghost of my brother is still clogging up the vents. I'm not a stager, Leo. I'm an experiment in forgetting. And the birthday cake? It's not a meal. It's a lure. They want to see if I'll cry when I smell the peppermint. They want to see if I'm finally hollow. I found it tonight. A small, black leather diary hidden inside the vents of the library. It wasn't filled with sketches or blueprints. It was filled with dates. I flipped to the beginning, expecting to see 2024. But the first entry was dated April 2018, 6 months after the storm. The handwriting was neat, clinical, and terrifyingly familiar. It said, "The foundation is poured. The subject is currently in a state of Sloan. We will begin the first cycle of forgetting tomorrow." April 2018. Leo, that's 9 years ago. I've been in this house for nearly a decade. I looked at my reflection in the diary's polished cover. I don't look 31. I look tired. I looked at the entry for today's date, but the page was empty. Only a single word was written at the bottom in red ink: reset. Vesper's voice drifted down, sounding almost pitying. "Sloan, some books are better left closed. You're ruining the aesthetic of the room." I threw the diary across the room. "What reset, Vesper? Who am I?" I screamed. The lights in the house didn't flicker this time. They turned a deep, suffocating red. A siren began to wail, but it wasn't a security alarm. It sounded like an emergency broadcast from a dream. Vesper said, "The buyer has arrived, Sloan. Please assume your position in the foyer. The navy coat must be worn. The memory must be suppressed. It is time for the final inspection. I ran to the foyer, but the front door wasn't there. Where the entrance used to be, there was only a solid sheet of glass, 10 inches thick. Beyond the glass, I didn't see a driveway or a street. I saw a dark, empty void. And then a light flickered on the other side. I saw a group of people in white coats, holding clipboards, looking in at me. They weren't buyers, Leo. They looked like audience members. They were watching me like I was a display in a gallery. I pressed my hands against the glass, screaming for them to help me. But they didn't react to my voice. One of them pointed at the navy coat I was wearing and nodded, making a note on his pad. I realized then that the glass is soundproof. It's not meant to keep the world out. It's meant to keep the transparent lie in. I looked back at the house, and for the first time, I saw the navy coat standing at the top of the stairs. She wasn't a reflection. She was waiting for me to fail so she could take over again. The woman at the top of the stairs didn't speak with her mouth. Her voice came through the house speakers, overriding Vesper's velvet tone. It was my voice, but stripped of all the jagged edges. "Sloane," she said, "you are making a scene. The spectators didn't come to see a breakdown. They came to see the masterpiece. Put the photo away. Straighten the coat. The design requires absolute compliance." I looked at her, and the light hit her gold ring. It was blinding. "Who are you?" I screamed, my voice cracking against the glass. She took a step down the stairs, her movements fluid and rehearsed. "I am the one who survived the lake, Sloane. I am the one who realized that if the dock was too weak, I had to build something that could never break. I am the architect of this piece. You are just the ghost that haunts the hallways. Now go to the kitchen. The peppermint cake is waiting. Do your job." I backed away, stumbling toward the kitchen. The peppermint smell was overwhelming now, sickly sweet, like a funeral. I looked at the spectators behind the glass. They were leaning in, their faces pressed against the transparent barrier. They weren't looking for a house to buy, Leo. They were looking for a flaw in the Sloane program. One of them tapped on the glass and pointed at the cake. They wanted me to eat. They wanted me to perform the memory. I picked up the knife, the plastic one Vesper insisted on. It felt light and useless in my hand. I looked up at the navy coat, who was now standing at the kitchen island. She looked so composed, so safe. "Why do you hate him?" I whispered, holding your photo tight. "Why do you want to bury Leo under all this glass?" She didn't flinch. She just straightened a crystal glass on the table. "I don't hate him, Sloane. I am the only one who realized that remembering him is a structural hazard." "A structural hazard. That's what you are to her, Leo. A flaw in the blueprint." I looked at the cake, and for the first time I didn't see a birthday treat. I saw a distraction, a way to keep my hands busy so I wouldn't notice the bars on the windows. I looked at the navy coat and I realized she isn't my boss. She isn't a rival. She's a cage. I took the plastic knife and I didn't cut the cake. I drove the blunt tip into the white marble of the counter. I wanted to see if the lie would bleed. I found it hidden inside the kitchen's sleek touchscreen pantry. A physical binder, heavy and white, with no title on the spine. I opened it, expecting a warranty for the appliances. Instead, it was a manual for my own life. Every page was a list of triggers and responses. It listed my favorite color, seafoam green, as a stability anchor. It listed the smell of peppermint as a recall hazard. I'm not being hired to stage this house, Leo. I'm being programmed to inhabit it. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking. There were graphs of my sleep cycles, my heart rate, and my daily dissociation depth. The manual didn't refer to me by my name. It called me the resident. And the woman in the navy coat? She was listed as the supervisor. Vesper's voice came through the fridge speakers, sharp and clear. "Sloane, reading the technical specifications is a violation of your recovery contract. Please return the manual to the slot." Recovery contract? I looked back at the glass wall where the buyers were standing. They were scribbling on their clipboards, their eyes fixed on the binder in my hands. They didn't look like they were buying a house. They looked like they were watching a lab rat find the exit to a maze. I realized then that the void outside isn't space. It's just the darkness of an observation room. I'm not in a mansion, Leo. I'm in a display case. The navy coat appeared in the kitchen doorway. She wasn't holding a knife or a weapon. She was holding a small silver tray with a single white pill and a glass of water. "You've reached the limit of the simulation, Sloan," she said, her voice echoing the Vesper AI perfectly. "The architects built this glass world to keep you from the storm. But you keep trying to break the windows. Why do you want to go back to the rain? There's nothing left for you there." I looked at the pill, then at the buyers behind the glass, then at the navy coat. I realized the navy coat isn't just a part of me. She's the part of me that works for them. She's the warden I built to keep the Sloan part of me under control. I took the glass of water and threw it, not at her, but at the buyers. The water splashed against the glass and slid down in long, clear streaks. They didn't even flinch. To them, I'm just a silent movie. I pushed past the navy coat and ran for the library. But as I turned the corner, the hallway didn't end. It just kept stretching, the white marble floor repeating in an infinite, dizzying loop. I looked back at the kitchen, but the appliances were gone. In their place were cold, brushed steel cabinets and a row of monitors displaying my own brainwaves. "Vesper, stop it!" I screamed. The AI's voice flickered like a dying candle. "Sloan, the render is failing. Please remain stationary." "Render?" I reached out to touch the wall, but my hand didn't hit solid wood. It hit something soft, a thick, gray fabric that felt like industrial padding. For a split second, the beautiful library dissolved, and I saw a glimpse of the truth. A small, square room with no windows and a single camera lens staring at me from the ceiling. I blinked, and the mahogany shelves were back. But they were trembling. The lie is getting thin, Leo. I can see the bones of the cage. I looked at the buyers behind the glass. They weren't looking at the furniture anymore. They were leaning against the barrier, their faces filled with a terrifying clinical fascination. One of them began to speak into a headset, and his voice leaked through the intercom. "Subject is showing signs of environmental rejection. Increase the sedative mist." A cold, sweet-smelling vapor began to hiss from the vents. It smelled like peppermint. It smelled like a trap. I grabbed a heavy book from the shelf, The Principles of Structural Integrity. I didn't open it. I used it as a hammer, smashing it against the glass where the lead observer stood. "I am not a subject," I roared. The man didn't move. He just watched the book hit the glass. On his side of the barrier, I saw a digital screen. It showed a map of my brain, and a large section was glowing a violent, angry red. It was labeled the Leo Protocol. Status: critical. The navy coat was standing behind me now. She didn't look like a supervisor anymore. She looked like a ghost that had been caught in the light. She was translucent, fading in and out of the library's shadows. "Sloan," she whispered, and this time, her voice was inside my own ears. "The architect can't hold the ceiling up much longer. If you keep digging, the whole world will come down on us. Is the truth worth the burial?" I looked at the red glow on the observer's screen and I knew. The truth is the only way out. I struck the glass again, and this time, the library didn't just tremble, it vanished. The mahogany shelves flickered out like a blown fuse, leaving me standing in a room of cold, white plastic and gray fabric. The mansion was gone. There was no fireplace, no silk pillows, no vintage roadster. There was only a narrow cot, a bolted-down table, and the smell of ozone. I looked at my hands. I wasn't wearing the navy coat. I was wearing a heavy canvas gown with ties at the wrists. The observers behind the glass finally spoke. Their voices didn't come through Vesper anymore. They came through a harsh metallic speaker on the wall. "Resident 402, please step away from the observation barrier. The episode is concluding. Total environment failure in 10 seconds. I looked at the man with the clipboard. He wasn't a buyer. He was a doctor. And the woman standing next to him, she was the one I'd been calling the navy coat. She was real. She was holding the jacket in her arms. The woman stepped through a heavy steel door that I hadn't seen before. She didn't look like a ghost anymore. She looked exhausted. She sat across from me at the bolted table and laid the navy coat between us. "Sloan," she said softly. "My name is Dr. Eris. I am the lead architect of your therapy. We built the glass house to give your mind a place to rest while we processed the lake. But you keep trying to set the house on fire. Do you know why?" I stared at her, my tongue feeling thick and useless. "The peppermint," I whispered. "The dock. The storm." Dr. Eris shook her head slowly. She reached into the pocket of the navy coat and pulled out a small digital tablet. She slid it across the table. "There was no storm, Sloan. It was a clear, sunny day. Look at the footage. We need you to look at it, or the loop will never end. We can't keep staging the lie for you if you won't accept the truth." I didn't want to touch the tablet. I wanted the glass walls back. I wanted the fake lights and the velvet voice of Vesper. But the room remained white and cold. I looked at the screen. I saw the dock at the lake house. I saw a younger version of myself, obsessed with the blueprints, checking the bolts, making sure everything was perfect. And I saw Leo. He wasn't scared. He was laughing. He wasn't looking at the water. He was looking at me. And then, the screen went black. Dr. Eris tapped the tablet, and the video flickered back to life. "Watch the bolts, Sloan. You've blamed your design for 10 years. You've lived in a glass cage because you thought your math failed him. But look at the wood." I leaned in, my breath fogging the screen. I saw the younger me tighten the last screw. I saw the dock, solid and silver under the sun. It wasn't the wood that gave way. It was the earth itself. A sinkhole, sudden and silent, swallowing the shore. I watched in slow motion as the ground simply vanished beneath the pilings. There was no storm to fight, no current to map. It was a freak of nature, a geological glitch that no architect in the world could have predicted. I saw myself reach for him, my fingers missing his hand by a fraction of an inch. I saw the look on my face, not guilt, but pure, unadulterated shock. I didn't fail the design. The world just broke, and I happened to be standing on the seam. The tablet went dark. The silence in the observation room was no longer suffocating. It was empty. I looked at Dr. Eris. "The peppermint," I whispered. "Why do I smell it when I'm afraid?" She leaned forward, her eyes gentle. "Because that morning, you were eating peppermint candies while you worked. It's the last thing you tasted before the world fell apart. Your brain linked the scent to the trauma. We used it in the mist to see if you could face the scent without the Sloan mask." I looked at the canvas gown I was wearing. The navy coat wasn't a villain, and Sloan wasn't a victim. They were just two halves of a bridge that couldn't meet in the middle. I had built the glass house because I couldn't live in a world where things happened for no reason. I needed a principle to blame. I needed a blueprint to fix. Because if I could fix the design, I could believe that next time I'd be strong enough to hold the ground together. Dr. Eris stood up and walked to the observation glass. She pressed a button, and the transparency faded. The buyers were gone. The void was gone. Beyond the glass was a small, sun-drenched garden with a single oak tree. "The simulation is over, Sloan," she said. "You don't need to stage the perfection anymore. The house is gone. The lie is transparent. Are you ready to walk out into a world that doesn't have a blueprint?" I stood at the threshold of the heavy steel door. My legs felt weak, not because of the medicine, but because I hadn't walked on real ground in years. I looked back at the room, the reflection room. It looked so small. To think, I had turned these 4 padded walls into a sprawling mansion with an infinite library. The mind is a terrifyingly beautiful architect. It will build a kingdom just to keep you from seeing a single grave. Dr. Eris handed me a bag of my belongings. No navy coat, no signet ring. Just a pair of worn jeans, a soft cotton shirt, and the small crumpled photograph of Leo. I looked at his face without the staging. He looked so young. I realized that in my head, I had been trying to grow him up. I had been trying to design a life for him that he never got to have. But the boy in the photo doesn't need a blueprint. He just needs to be remembered. We walked down a hallway that didn't loop. It was lined with windows that showed a real sky, blue, vast, and indifferent. I saw other residents sitting in a common area. They weren't actors or corporate spies. They were just people, some staring at the floor, some talking to voices I couldn't hear. I felt a surge of empathy so sharp it hurt. We were all just stagers, trying to make our internal ruins look like homes so we could survive the night. At the end of the hall, there was a glass case, the real one. Inside was the staging manual I had found earlier. Dr. Aris saw me looking. "That was your diary, Sloan. You wrote it during your first year here. You were the one who created the supervisor persona to keep yourself in check. You were the one who dictated the peppermint mist. You weren't a victim of the facility. You were its lead designer. You built your own recovery." I was the lead designer. I looked at the manual and saw the handwriting, neat, clinical, and precise. The Navy coat wasn't a warden sent by a mysterious principal. She was the part of me that refused to give up. She was the part of me that knew Sloan was too broken to carry the truth, so she built a glass house to hold her until she was strong enough to stand. I didn't just survive the lake, Leo. I survived the silence that followed. I sat on the edge of the cot, the canvas gown replaced by the clothes of the woman I used to be. Dr. Aris stayed by the door, giving me the space to breathe. The room was silent now. No vesper, no humming in the floorboards, no rhythmic thuds from a basement that didn't exist. I realized that the house wasn't just a cage, Leo. It was a cocoon. I had woven it out of glass and grief, waiting for the day I could look at the sun without screaming. I picked up the navy coat from the table. It didn't feel like a villain's uniform anymore. I ran my thumb over the gold signet ring that Dr. Aris had placed beside it. It wasn't a symbol of a corporate empire. It was our father's ring. I was the one who put it on when I felt the world getting too small. I was the one who wore it to remind myself that I could be strong, even when my heart was made of splinters. I wasn't being haunted, Leo. I was being protected. I looked into the small plastic mirror on the wall. For the first time, the image didn't split. I didn't see a terrified girl on one side and a cold architect on the other. I just saw Sloan, a woman who had been through a storm that no one else saw. I realized that the principal I was waiting for, the one I thought held all the answers, was just the version of me that knew how to survive the unthinkable. I am my own principal. I am my own architect. Dr. Aris stepped forward and handed me a small, sealed envelope. It wasn't an order or a bill. It was a discharge paper. "You built a beautiful house, Sloan," she said quietly. "But even the best designs are meant to be lived in, not hidden behind. The lake is still there. The ground is stable. And you are allowed to be happy, even if the world isn't perfect." I tucked the paper into my pocket, right next to your photo, Leo. The paper felt like a key. I stood up, and for the first time in 9 years, I didn't look for a camera. I didn't wait for Vesper to tell me the stage was ready. I realized that the greatest lie I ever told wasn't the glass mansion or the corporate conspiracy. It was the belief that I wasn't enough to carry your memory on my own. I don't need a fortress to keep you safe, Leo. I just need a heart that isn't afraid to break. I turned toward the door, and the light from the hallway didn't look like a render. It looked like home. I walked out of the facility doors and the air hit me like a physical weight. It wasn't the temperature-controlled, peppermint-filtered breeze of the mansion. It was raw. It smelled of wet pavement, car exhaust, and growing grass. I stood on the sidewalk and watched a leaf dance across the concrete. It moved with a chaotic, unpredictable grace. For the first time in a decade, I didn't try to calculate its trajectory. I just watched it land. I took a bus to the lake. I thought the water would look like the dark, churning monster from my dreams. But it was still. It reflected the sky with a clarity that no smart glass could ever replicate. I walked to the edge of the new dock, a simple wooden structure built by strangers. I sat on the edge and let my feet dangle over the water. The ground beneath me felt solid. The earth wasn't waiting to swallow me. It was just holding me up. I pulled your photo out of my pocket, Leo. The edges were frayed and the color had faded, but your smile was still there. I realized that I didn't need to engineer a world where you never fell. I just needed to live in a world where I could remember you without the glass. I let out a breath I'd been holding for 9 years, and I watched it disappear into the air. I whispered your name, and for once, there was no echo, just the sound of the ripples against the shore. The transparent lie served its purpose. It was the bridge I built to get across the impossible. But I don't need the architect anymore, and I don't need the cage. I am Sloane, and I am standing in the rain, and I am finally, truly okay. We all build structures to survive our darkest days, but remember, the beauty of a house isn't in the walls that keep the world out. It's in the windows that let the light back in. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the glass. If this story moved you, stay tuned for more psychological thrillers and mysteries of the mind. My name is Sloane, and the light is finally on. I'll see you in the next story.